So something I've noticed increasingly as the years have gone by is this topic by the name of design trends. So if you're a graphic designer, or if you've worked with a graphic designer before, or maybe you manage a group of graphic designers, I'm sure you've heard of the term and you're well familiar with it. Typically speaking, when you're talking about design trends, it's pretty simple. What you're going to see across, web interfaces, or across different apps, or across different tools that exist online today, you're going to start seeing similarities in terms of typefaces, colors that are used, the way that items are arranged. And though the idea of a design trend isn't necessarily new, ever since I started seeing them back in my early days as a designer all the way till now, I've never been a particular fan of the idea or the concept of a design trend. The first is because it's helpful to know what exactly design is. I think a lot of individuals who are new to the industry, who are new as designers in general, tend to think that design is buttons and colors and typography. And while those are elements of design, if we're specifically talking about the web, it's only a very small piece of what design actually is. To use an illustration, if we were talking about a house, for example, those types of things that we would consider design would be like the curtains, the color of the paint used on the trim, on the walls, the style of the door, things like that. However, what that completely discounts and leaves out is the layout of the room, where the door is placed, whether or not it has 2 stories. If it has 2 stories, how's that laid out? Where's the bathroom as opposed to the living room, as opposed to the kitchen? Is it easy to access? Things like that are also part of design. So one of the biggest problems I have personally with design trends is it takes a step back and it actually removes one of the most important parts of what design is actually meant to do, particularly in the context of the web. A really good designer's job isn't to determine what looks nice or what's trendy. The role of a designer is to determine what is the personality of the brand that I am trying to represent, and how can I best do that in a visual manner. If you're constantly looking at design trends, what you're going to be thinking about is this typeface I saw over here, or this style of illustration used over here, or these rounded corners, or this color of button. You're going to be thinking about all of these things, which have little to nothing to do with portraying the brand that you are trying to work for. There's actually a pretty good rule of thumb that you can use whether or not somebody is a good designer, great designer, or just a mediocre one. And that is, can you tell that this is something that particular designer designed, right? So if you were to look through their portfolio, would you see a lot of pieces that look extraordinarily similar? Or would you see a diverse array of things that reflect the personality of whatever brand they are designing for? One of the problems with using a pattern or a style that a lot of other sites are using is that for the client that you're working with, it actually helps their brand blend into the background of other brands. If you treat each and every brand or website that you're working on as an individual, then it's easier for you as the designer to use all the tools at your disposal, whether that be typefaces, whether that be buttons, whether that be layout, whatever those aspects are of the design, it allows you to craft those to fit that brand and personality, as opposed to what other designers are doing that they think just kind of looks cool. So in other words, the focus of a good designer is on serving what works best for their client, not necessarily what they find personally interesting or good looking. And that's one of the biggest problems with design trends. The other problem with design trends, and something that I touched on a little bit earlier, is what design is for. Again, I talked about things like typography and color schemes and layouts and all these different aspects, but design isn't about the way something looks. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing Steve Jobs on this one, but it's about the way that something works. All of those buttons and tools and typography and imagery and illustrations, all those things should only work together in order to form a cohesive experience for the user. That's one of the reasons why when you're designing for the web, it is so important to go through the proper phases of actually designing and building out a site. Starting out with a nice little outline, then doing wireframes, then doing mock-ups. Each of these phases are meant to help you as the designer think through what's the best possible way to organize, categorize, and allow the user to easily navigate through the content. Part of the problem of focusing on trends or buttons or external aspects of what makes a design means that you're forgetting arguably the most important part of the design. You can create something that's just black and white and plain and uses Times New Roman. But if it's easy to navigate, easy to access, and helps a user solve their problems quickly, then it's 10 times better than the prettiest website on the planet. So that's pretty much it. I've been seeing a lot of talk in different articles and videos posted about design trends and what people should be doing when it comes to the different typefaces that are in use, or the different headline styles, or the different illustration styles. And it always brings me back to reminding people and reminding myself what really is the core of design. And while those things are a piece of what design is, it's not the core. The core is creating something that works really well for the users who are using it. But as always, I love to hear from you guys, so feel free to leave me a comment below. Let me know what's your experience with design or working with designers. What have you seen out there in terms of trends versus functionality? As always, if you found this video useful, be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.